You're not wrong if you feel uncomfortable when you're told to ask for those referrals and you don't want to do it. But you do have to pay attention to what is another way, what's another mechanism, and how can we make it work. And I find it typically helps people to kind of understand this when they can realize, yeah, asking is manufactured. I am artificially creating what doesn't exist. And then my asking becomes the trigger, which means then I'm stuck always having to ask. So what if I could release that and focus on generating referrals in a way where I never have to ask?
Hello, Profit First entrepreneurs. I am so excited today. We have a very interesting conversation. We're going to talk about growing your revenue through the use of referrals, right? Especially in Profit First. So many people spend so much money on ads, Facebook ads, and, especially in a world of iOS not being able to target, right? It can be a very expensive ordeal. But today we have a very special guest. Her name is Stacey Brown Randall, and she's going to talk to us all about referrals. Now, Stacey is a multiple award-winning author. She's wrote the book, Generating Business Referrals Without Asking. She's also a host of a podcast called Roadmap to Grow Your Business. She has worked with large corporations as well as franchises, but her heart really is to help small business owners and solopreneurs really grow their business through referrals. Now, Stacey has been featured in many publications, including Entrepreneur Magazine, Investor Business Daily, Forbes, CEO World, Fox, and more. So please join me in welcoming Stacey Brown Randall to our platform. Hey, Stacey, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, definitely. So Stacey, this is an awkward thing for a lot of business owners, right? They are obviously masters at what they do. Otherwise, they wouldn't start a business. They wouldn't stay in business if they weren't good at it. But a lot of people struggle with entrepreneurship, right? Particularly with asking for referrals. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about, why we struggle. But first of all, tell us a little bit about you. Tell us how you got interested, because I know you got an organizational communication background, which, is a little bit different in referrals. But let's tell me a little bit about
just a little.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about how you got interested in this area.
Yeah, I wish I could tell you that I woke up one day and God was like, hey, Stacey, you're now going to be brilliant when it comes to generating referrals in an entirely different way than we've been taught for decades and decades. It's not how it worked out. That would be a really cool story. I come from the school of hard knocks. So most of the things that I have gotten good at, I have had to learn the hard way. So I actually had a business. I was an HR consulting firm. I worked with a number of some of the larger accounting firms in the United States and banks and things like that. It was a consulting firm that I had for about not quite 5 years. It made it to the 4-year mark, didn't make it past that. And when I looked back on that business and why it failed, because I had to go back and get a job in corporate America after that business failed. It was awful. And once you've tasted freedom, it's really hard to go back and work for someone else and sit on a leadership team and deal with politics and all those things, right? And so when my business failed, I kind of looked back and I was like, I'm really good at what I do. And I had some big name clients like, KPMG and Ally Bank. Like, what was I doing wrong that I couldn't sustain it? And there was a number of things that I learned. There's a number of lessons to be learned within a business failure if you're courageous enough to decide to learn from them. But for me, it was looking at the biggest one was the not touching business development every day. And I don't mean you have to do something every day. I mean, you've got to have systems and processes in place to touch business development every day to build and continue to build your pipeline. And that was one area where I was not succeeding in. When I could get someone to the table, I could usually close them into a client, but I didn't have enough people to talk to. And so when I was in corporate America after my business failed and I was like figuring out what went wrong and why it went wrong, and I uncovered that, I thought, okay, I'm going to have an exit strategy. I kind of knew I was meant to be an entrepreneur, and even interviewing for jobs, I was like, I'm going to have to get back out on my own. I started a business and I was like, we're just going to do some things different. We're going to take what we know works, and then we're also going to be willing to do some things different. I paid attention to referrals as a strategy to grow my business. I thought, well, I'm really good at what I do. Why am I not getting referrals? At my consulting firm, I actually looked back at where all of my clients came from, and not one came from a referral. In fact, the only referral that business received was 2 years after I'd shut it down. I actually get a referral for that business. And so it was, just through that process of like, wait, but referrals are the best way to grow your business. Like you have someone referred to you, they already trust you. They're usually less price sensitive. They're easier to close. They're quicker to close. They're more than likely going to be your ideal client. Not always, but they can be. And I was like, why didn't I get any? And how do I make that happen as a reality in my next business? Like everybody else, I went to the all-knowing Google and I read the books and I was like, okay, how do we get referrals? And everyone's like, you have to ask. And if you don't ask, then you have to compensate. And if you don't want to compensate, then you've got to network to know a ton of people. So you're always being seen. And you have to really promotional and gimmicky in your push for referrals. And I was like, what if I don't want to do any of that? What if none of that fits me? What if none of that fits my character? What if none of that fits my brand personality of how I want to show up in the marketplace? It's not how I want my company to be seen. Then the advice was, well, you better hope you get some then. And that's all you got. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm not okay with that. I'm not down with this. So I typically reverse engineer things to figure out where I want to go. And I started throwing spaghetti on the wall, trying to figure out how can I make referrals happen in a different way. And what I've learned over the 10 years now that I've actually been teaching other business owners how to generate referral in this very authentic way and in a way that works and has great success is that it's really actually based on why referrals happen in the first place. I mean, there is a piece that makes it very scientific, and we kind of look at what the brain science says about referrals, what psychology says about referrals, what behavioral economics says about referrals, and what social science says. And when you look at all those ways of like looking at it from that perspective of referrals, then you can understand why they're triggering, how they're triggering, and back into a solution that'll work for you. And for me, it was all about, I don't want to be uncomfortable or feel awkward or put anyone out with the idea of referring me, which means I have to make it all about my referral source and figuring out how to do that. And that's the strategy that I ultimately built, and really comes down to just knowing that, hey, you can get referrals in an entirely different way. And the way that I teach happens to be without manipulation, without compensation, and definitely without asking. Like people come to me, they're like, I'm going to learn your ways and then you're going to teach me to ask, right? I'm like, no, I am never going to teach you to ask, because I just know you can do it differently and you can do it better.
I love that. And you said something that was really interesting too in that comment, that you're making it all about the source, right? Tell me a little bit more about that, making it all about the source.
Yeah. So every time a client, or let's even back up further, anytime a prospect shows up in your business, whether they become a client or not, they've come from a source, right? They've come from some lead generation source, whether they came through a Facebook ad, you met them at a networking event, they happened to answer one of your cold calls. I don't know many people who are still doing that, but I do know it happens out there in the world, right? They happen to answer your cold call. They happen to answer one of your cold emails, whatever it is, or they were referred to you. They all come from a place, and that place is referred to as the source. In referrals, that source is the referral source. And what makes it different than any other source is that it's a human on the other end. The referral source is always a human, and they're always going to be the person that connects you to the prospect. So when you have that prospect that's come into your pipeline that you're trying to close as a client, you need to know which ones were referred to you by other people and which ones came by other sources. And when we break down referral sources, like we get kind of like just looking at it at its most basic level, a referral source is always a human. And then it falls into one of four categories. It's going to be your clients, either current or previous clients that are referring you. It's going to be centers of influence, COIs. And your centers of influence that are going to refer you, it's not like the thousands of people you're connected to on LinkedIn or that you know in your network or that are in your phone contacts. It's like a much smaller subset of people who know what you do, don't do what you do, so there's no competitive overlap. And then, of course, they come across with some regularity your ideal client to be able to refer to you. But we've got clients and centers of influence, and those are the top two sources I think every business owner should focus on cultivating referrals from. But there's two more types of referral sources. It's family and friends, which usually by definition, family and friends will refer to you if they can. If you're in a business where they can, they'll refer to you regardless of anything you do. They're going to refer to you because they're family or they're friends. Like I always say, my husband, who is in sales, comes across people from time to actually refer to me. And as long as we're married, he's probably always going to refer to me. He doesn't need any special strategy or plan to get him to refer to me. So we always say family and friends will typically refer to you because they care about you. And so you have to worry about a plan for them. And then strangers is the fourth category. I don't mean that a stranger is referring you and they don't know you. I mean, they're a stranger to you. They may know you because either they have read an article that you were interviewed in and they really took to you, or they know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who had a great experience, or you've just been in business for so long, your reputation precedes itself. And so there will be people who know you, and then they will refer people to you. They're a stranger to you, but you can't create a plan and a strategy to pick a needle out of a haystack. So we focus our strategy for referrals around our clients and our COIs, but we're always thankful, right, when we get referrals from family and friends, and then, of course, from strangers as well.
I love that. Yes, your husband will always refer you, right?
I mean, he better.
I know my husband runs around church going, "You need an accountant? Here she is."
Yes.
That is so great.
They are wonderful, right? Our spouses and partners are wonderful when they are supportive.
So let's talk about the psychology of the ask. Why do most business owners struggle with asking for referrals? What holds them back from that?
Yeah. So here's what I love. The majority of us, now I'm kind of famous for saying like 92% of us don't want to ask for referrals. That's a completely made up statistic, but I truly believe that it's real. I believe that the people who are comfortable asking for referrals are unicorns. Like they are just special people who have no problem asking. And so all the advice is built for those folks, but they're like 8%, right? Of like everybody out there trying to generate business for their businesses. They're just special and unicorns, and they're in the minority. The majority of us, you think about, hey, how do I need to ask for a referral? And we instantly you can just feel it. Like you just get uncomfortable. And the reality of it is that we are supposed to figure out how to get comfortable with that uncomfortableness. And the question I always ask is, why can't we just call the uncomfortableness for what it is? Why can't we just say, I don't have to, though. If it makes me that uncomfortable, why is that the only way? Why is that the only strategy? If I'm going to generate referrals, why do I have to do it in a way that makes me super uncomfortable? What people don't always know is at the heart of referrals, but they instinctively feel when they're trying to ask somebody for a referral, is that they're making it about them. And a referral is never about you. Yes, you get a new client, so it feels like it's about you, but the triggering points and the places in which that referral was actually brewing and then came to be for your business and actually was triggered into reality for you, really at the end of the day, is because you have a referral source who has somebody who comes to them and says, I got a problem and I'm trying to figure out how to solve it. And the referral source says, wait, I get to help you. I get to be the hero. I get to help you. And how I'm going to help you is I'm going to refer you to this person because they can solve your problem. And you being that person, right? The solution provider, like you're like, I'm getting a client. They're helping me grow my business. But really where a referral begins is in trying to help somebody. Your referral source is trying to help somebody who has a problem. And when we can keep the focus there and our strategy and our plan and our language and the what we do and the how often we do it and all the things that make it a plan and a process, when we can keep focused on the referral source and not use tactics that are focused on us, like asking or compensating, then we can actually have more referrals happen. What people don't realize is when you're asking for a referral, you're manufacturing something that doesn't actually exist. And when you ask somebody to refer you, what you've actually done is created work for them because there's not anybody they've thought about referring you. And now you're asking them to refer you and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, hold on. Let me think through my mind of who I've met recently that may need you, or let me pull up my phone, or you know what? I'll just get back to you. And then they never do. Now, I'm not saying that every once in a while you may happen to have a conversation with someone and they may randomly refer you if you've asked. But what that says is they only think to refer you when you ask. So then what becomes the trigger for future referrals? You remembering to constantly be asking. And nobody that I know wants to be in that position, because then you become the person that every time I meet with Stacey, she's just going to ask me. So I'm just going to start avoiding her, right? And that's a place none of us want to be. So it's just looking at the psychology behind referrals, why they happen, and then realizing that you're not wrong if you feel uncomfortable when you're told to ask for those referrals and you don't want to do it. But you do have to pay attention to what is another way, what's another mechanism, and how can we make it work? And I find it typically helps people to kind of understand this when they can realize, yeah, asking is manufactured. I am artificially creating what doesn't exist. And then my asking becomes the trigger, which means then I'm stuck always having to ask. So what if I could release that? and focus on generating referrals in a way where I never have to ask.
I love that. And you're absolutely right. We've all been approached by somebody that's asking for a referral. And every time you meet them, they're asking for a referral. They even offer to pay you for the referral. That's how bad it is sometimes
Yes.
with that. And so let's talk about that. Let's talk a little bit about how do you go about, you mentioned that it's all about helping, right? It's all about helping that person that is on the other side of getting the referral, right? To be better, be able to experience what you've experienced, or, knowing that you help people in these certain areas, that this is the guru that you need to go to, and really communicating that, I am just trying to help you out here. Not necessarily getting something for that. So how do you get that message out in the world that, hey, we're looking to help more people, and can you help us help more people?
Yeah. So I think in theory, there's nothing really wrong with that statement. But the reality of it is that's what we're all in business to do. There's only a very small minority that are in business not to help people and just to see how much money they can make. The majority of us get into business because we're good at something and it helps people. And then we're building a business around it. And there's nothing wrong with doing both at the same time, right? There's nothing wrong with helping people while you're actually making money. That is the definition of a business. But it does always start with helping people. And so there's this idea that I need people to know that I'm available to help people. Well, that's making it about you. I always tell my clients that I work with, if you want to turbocharge the process of getting someone to refer you who's never referred you before, you're going to have to come at this from an entirely different direction. And you're going to have to make it 100% about them, which means it's going to feel like the whole process is moving slower. But if you're authentic and you're real and you actually are genuinely focused on helping that person and getting to know that person and seeing how you can help them, that's what truly turbocharges a process. Because let's be honest, the only way you can direct how I think is if you impact how I feel. So if you impact how I feel about you, and I feel like you're genuine and you care about me and you didn't make it about you, right? But you made it about me. Well, the natural reciprocity kind of comes into place and I'm thinking about you. And then if we do that enough times, right? And of course, there's a strategy that I teach, and that's from the what you do and how often you do it and the language that you do. And it has to come from this authentic place. But the truth is that if we make helping others a focal point, right? Bob Burg wasn't wrong when he wrote the book Go Giver and say givers receive, right? We do receive when we give. Of course, we obviously have a strategy that we're following so that we can manage it and keep up with the process and stuff. But at the end of the day, if you want someone to remember to refer you, you have to be memorable. And how you are memorable is to occupy space in their mind. And how you do that, because we're by nature selfish creatures, right? Is you have to take care of them first. And then you're going to create space in their mind to where they would be more open to the idea of referring you if they come across people to refer to you. Because there's two things that have to happen for a referral to happen: desire and opportunity. And you only control one of them. You only control desire. You only control the desire that I will pick you as my accountant or as my bookkeeper or as my CPA, right? I only pick you as my attorney. I only pick you. Like, there's thousands of you out there. There's lots of folks I could decide to refer, but why you? That's a desire of a relationship, of the trust factor that we have and me knowing what you do and that you do good work. The other piece to though is that really does come down to the relationship we have as well. Now, the second side of that is, well, then I've got to have opportunity. I actually got to come across the people to refer to you. You don't control opportunity, which is why who you select to be your referral sources, those that you want to refer you, if they're not already referring you, that's a big piece of the puzzle in terms of you don't control opportunity. So we have to make sure that we're selecting and being strategic and who would be the right types of folks who come across our ideal client. And then we focus in on what we control, which is the desire piece. So I always tell folks, when people hear me talk about referrals without asking, they're like, that sounds amazing. And I'm like, there is still work to be done, though. It's not an silver bullet, easy button kind of an answer. There's still work to be done. It's just going to feel different. It's going to come from a different place. And more than likely, you'll probably enjoy it more.
So many juicy nuggets in that, Stacey. Oh my goodness. So many juicy nuggets, Profit First Entrepreneurs, and that she just dropped some real truth bombs there. The power of association there, really making sure that you connect with people that, is going to be in the sphere of your ideal client, right? and not only connecting, but serving, right? Even serving without getting paid, right? Meaning that you're creating that feeling of, you know what, this person knows what they're talking about, right? They've helped me. And, I want to give a gift that goes on. If I see you struggling with it as a human being, I want to help you, and helping you might mean getting to know this person here and making that connection. So many really, really good truth bombs that were put in that statement, Stacey. So thank you very much for that. And so, we all want to know to ask, how do you ask, because at some point, if we're not front of mind, right, and maybe we shouldn't be asking. So tell us about that. How do we ask, and should we be asking?
Actually, no, you should never be asking. If you're having to ask, you're not doing it right. So there's 3 foundational strategies that I teach every business owner that they have to have in place in their business. You don't have to have all 3 of them to be super successful with referrals, but it certainly helps if you have these 3 in place. And the first one is getting more referrals from your existing referral sources. And so the very first thing you have to do is identify who are my referral sources today. And then we create a strategy or a plan of how we take care of them. And there's a scientific framework behind how that plan is made, the what you do and the what you say and how often you do it. All comes down to this framework that we teach about what it would look like on the other end of as a receiver, as a referral source of yours, as a receiver to receive this, and then that to develop and to grow our desire to refer you. So it's about getting more referrals from our referral sources. Then it's about identifying potential referral sources, those clients and COIs you wish would refer you. Well, they're not just going to do it because you snap your fingers, right? And you may turn them off if you ask them to refer you. And then if you do that, then you've shortchanged and shortcut all the referrals you could be receiving from them. So we teach a strategy about how to identify correctly the right people to refer you. And then how do you take them through a journey to cultivate that relationship so that they think about referring you, the what you do, the what you say, the how often you do it, all those things, right? So one strategy is on getting more referrals from our existing referral sources. The second strategy is on taking potential referral sources and cultivating them into brand new referral sources. And the third one is the referable client experience. You need to be referable. You need to be worthy of those referrals, but then you also need to be looking for opportunities to also extract referrals from your clients going through your client experience. And that's based on how your client experience runs, but there's some very key points we always talk about opportunities within the client experience to be able to generate referrals. If you're doing those 3 things, you'll never need to ask. It'll not even cross your mind that that's something you need to be doing. You need to be consistent with those, right? You need to put those processes in place, and you need to make sure that you or someone on your team is actually managing them. You can't go 12 months and not take care of your referral sources and think that they're going to give you referrals and think they're just going to magically remember you. And that way, what I teach is a way that we are really making sure that we are memorable and meaningful with our referral sources, those that we want to refer us or those that are already referring us. And that alone will allow someone to triple or quadruple the number of referrals they're usually receiving in a year. It does depend on some factors. But for most people, they would be happy if they could just double the number of referrals that they're receiving in a year. And to be able to have strategies in place that allow you to feel comfortable and confident and never have to ask and never compensate. We just don't ever have to go there within the strategies that I teach. And in fact, I tell people, if you do ask for referrals, you're going to have to stop when you're building out my strategy. And then you're going to do it and you're going to have success and you'll be like, I'll never ask again because I found a better way. So I know the idea that do we have to learn how to ask, that just comes over the fact that all we've heard about referrals for decades and decades and decades, and every guru and expert out there in the referral space that's been around for generations, it's because they've been teaching you to ask. This is just, well, it's not new to me. I mean, I've been doing it for 10 years, but for some people hearing it for the first time, they're like, wait, it's possible to go against conventional advice and have amazing success? Not always, but in this case, when it comes to referrals, absolutely.
Love it. So how are some ways of asking without asking then? So they know that you're accepting an referral.
Well, the first thing I would say is I don't want you to think about it as asking without asking, because it still puts you in that asking mindset, right? Like I've got to ask so I can get these referrals, but I'm going to make it look like I'm not asking. That's not being authentic either from that perspective. But it comes down to the strategies that we do. When we identify who our existing referral sources are, so much can tell us in that moment what we will do to take care of them, right? How will we stay top of mind? What will we do that makes us memorable and meaningful? And what is it that they need from us? And what is authentic to us to give, right? So, in some cases, I always tell folks like, hey, this is a really, really simple, like just to kind of give you an idea of like, we call these outreaches or touch points. You're going to do so many touch points throughout a year to be memorable and meaningful and stay top of mind with your referral sources and using those opportunities to plant referral seeds. But this is just a pretty simple one that I always tell folks is that if you're going to do a holiday card, you might as well get personal with your holiday card and let your clients and referral sources and prospects and of course, family, right? See the family behind the business owner or see the team of employees behind the business and the business owner, right? It doesn't have to be your family. I mean, everyone's family looks different and we all define it differently. It doesn't matter to me, but it's letting people see either your employees and your team or your family, however you define that, as that connection point of made of like, who are the people behind this business, behind this logo, behind this one business owner? It's just a connection point. Now, you cannot send out a personalized holiday card and be like, well, Stacey said on that podcast, if I send out a personalized holiday card, I'm gonna get all these referrals. Like it's a part of a plan. It's a part of outreach. But sometimes it's as simple as thinking about what allows me to connect better. And when you're already utilizing some things that you're already doing. I mean, people think about it all the time. They're like, we do client appreciation events. I'm like, have you ever thought about inviting your referral sources to your client appreciation events if they're not a client? And they're like, no, I never thought I could invite non-clients to a client appreciation event. I'm like, why? Those referral sources are responsible for some of those people being your clients. Why wouldn't you have them at your client appreciation event? So there's so many different things you can do using what you're already doing in your business. Or like there are some things I tell folks, like you need to do these couple of things and implementing them within your strategy. But at the end of the day, we still build this as a plan and we know what it looks like. And then we go systematize it within our business so that we actually remember to execute on it. And then we do it year after year after year. I have an attorney in my program who at the end of 2021, when she was building her plan for 2022, that was the 7th year in a row she had built her referral plan. And she hits her number of referrals that she needs in her business, which is 40 or more a year. And that's way more clients and cases than she can handle, but it gives her the ability to be picky as to who she's going to work with. And she gets those 40 plus referrals a year. 40 may be like, that's too little for me, right? Or that's way more than I need. Like everybody has their own numbers based on their capacity and how their business is structured. But the truth is like this becomes a system that then becomes just a way you run your business and it just continues to function. So when the Facebook algorithm changes, that's okay. When COVID hits and you no longer can do speaking in person, which is my world, right? When 2020 hit and it was like, there's no more speaking engagements and that part of the budget dried up. I'm like, well, that's okay. The business will be okay because I have other ways of bringing in clients. And a big part of that is referrals. And that isn't dependent on what's happening in the world or what's happening with our economy because referrals are evergreen. But you still have to have a strategy and a system in place to be able to generate them regardless of what's going on in your business.
I love that. Really, really great insight there with, building that relationship and increasing those touch points and staying front of mind. Very, very important. And we've all been approached by that person that wants to pay for those referrals. As a CPA, we're not allowed to accept those payments. It has to be like disclosed. If we actually recommend somebody and we're receiving payment, it has to be very obvious. So it's just easier as a CPA not to accept payments. So if anybody is wanting to pay us, no, we can't accept that. But just for our audience, what are your thoughts on people that are trying to pay for referrals?
Yeah. So, I feel like when you ask someone for a referral, you're creating more work for them. When you tell someone that you're going to compensate them or incentivize them for a referral, you're actually commoditizing the relationship. You're making it about money. And if I'm referring you because I'm trying to help someone, you just made it feel slimy. You just made it feel like, this isn't 100% truthful and honest. I've got to disclose it, right? I mean, I always tell folks, think about how the client would feel. If the client was referred to you because they thought that someone was referring them because you're the best person, and then they found out, wait, it was actually because they were making money off of their pain or problem, how as the business owner and the referral source would you feel having to look that client in the face and explain to them, well, yeah, I did refer you to them because I think they're great, but I also got hundreds or thousands of dollars for the process, right? Like the disclosure up front makes it okay. And that's like the affiliate programs and strategic partnerships where it's all disclosed. But most people aren't operating that way when they think about incentivizing. It is behind the scenes. It is under the table. It is a kickback. And I always say, just put yourself in the position of your client. If they were to find out they were referred to you because it wasn't because you're the best person, but you paid the most money for them, how would they feel? And for most people, depending on what they do and who they are, that's enough for them to be like, yeah, I knew there was a reason why I didn't like it. I'm just helping them articulate all the reasons and the feelings that go behind that compensation. So, of course, it's one of those things I'm definitely against.
Absolutely. And I'm sure that many entrepreneurs feel the same way that I do. We want to refer people because we think they're going to do a good job, right? We want them to do a good job. And we think that that is a good match, meaning that person can help them, right?
Yep.
And that's the reason why we want to refer. So thank you for your insights on that,
Yeah.
Stacey. Very, very good. What do you think about those networking groups? Like you hear BNI, the Chamber of Commerce, where, especially BNI groups where they're constantly, and I've never been part of one, so I don't want to judge one or the other, but they're specifically set up for referrals.
Yeah, actually, they're specifically set up for leads. But every leads group out there uses the word referral because it's like how I can get your attention. And you did a podcast episode on this because it drives me crazy when I will see people like use content marketing to get more referrals or use events to get more referrals. And that's not even what the article is about or what their premise is about. But they know if they use the word referrals in their headline or in their marketing, it's going to get eyeballs and people are going to then want to learn more, even if it then talks nothing about referrals. It drives me crazy. But the reality of it is when you think about that, right? When you think about it from that perspective, is that the way that referrals work and the way that they need to work, they're based on relationships. So it's not that you can't form those relationships in any of those lead groups, but we do need to recognize what those groups are all about. And the minute you put a requirement on the number of leads that have to be passed, or the number of times like you have to show up and you have to get so many leads, right? At some point, you're just trading names because you're trying to hit a quota. And that really dilutes, I think, the power of what those groups could be all about. The groups that work well are the groups where you're going to have one-on-ones with the people in the group and you're going to get to know them and you're going to form a relationship and there's going to be trust. And then if they can come across your ideal client, that relationship will be there for them naturally to refer you. I think people should use networking groups as strategic opportunities to look for new referral sources. But that doesn't mean everybody in that group is ultimately going to be a great referral source. So which group you join and how often you get involved and what you do to invest in it is going to matter. I think the weekly leads groups, no matter what the format is, I think those are a little bit on the edge of, are we really cultivating a real relationship? That has everything to do with who's in the group. And you could land yourself in an awesome one where you form great relationships and you get great referrals. Like I think about my husband who's in a networking group and he goes to their monthly luncheons and he's on the golf committee and he does all these things. And we were literally having a conversation about, we're on spring break, we're at the beach. And he's like, what if I came back a day early because this networking group is having this golf tournament and I'm on the committee and I probably need to be there for it. And I, not calmly inside, but as calmly as I could on the outside, I just said, how many referrals or potential clients have you received from that group in the 2 years you've been in it, doing all the things that you do, other than the fact you've made some great friends? And he was like, yeah, none. I guess I'll be staying at the beach. And I was like, yep, I think that's probably the right choice. There's nothing wrong with that group. There's nothing wrong with him investing his time in it if he understands what the results are from it. And that is where I think people get it all wrong with networking. It's like the spray and pray. Like, how many places can I go? How often can I be there? But are we really making connections and really strategizing on who is the right person in those groups to be referring to us? And who are the people in that group that you need to be referring to? You should be looking at that from a two-way street. It makes those strategic networking opportunities so much richer.
I love that. And you're absolutely right. Not every person is a giver, right? Every person is naturally, they have that persona that, mother bear, I want to help you. I want you to grow. I want you to be the best that you can be. There are people that are in it for, just to rub shoulders, just to be part of the club that are never going to network. And then there are people that are truly givers. So just really not just looking at the organization, but looking at the dynamic in the organization, like who is looking out to help people. Is this a standoffish group of people just joining the group to be part of the group? Or is this a group of givers where they're really looking to make an impact in other people's lives? So organizations that are filled with those kind of people, very, very good advice. Now, Stacey, you have dropped so many awesome pieces of wisdom, and we are truly like going away from this episode like, oh, Stacey, we want more, we want more, we want more. But before we close off today, I'm going to ask you to give us a piece of advice. It could be personal, it could be business. What would be a piece of advice that you would give our viewers and listeners today?
Yeah, so I could go with the business piece, but I'd rather give something on the personal side just to mix it up a little bit. There is a comment or a statement or a question that I asked my daughter. My daughter's 11. She's my youngest of 3. I have 2 older boys. And I always ask her from time to time, were you brave today? And I think it's such a great question to ask yourself as a business owner. We are faced with hundreds of moments on any given day or week or month to be brave. And sometimes we default into the things that are just good enough because they feel comfortable. But as a business owner, if we really want to build the business we're ultimately after, we have to be willing to ask ourselves, was I brave today? Did I decide to try to put that plugin on my WordPress site and not break everything? And I was, brave enough to click connect, right? Or was I brave enough to go to that networking event? Or was I brave enough to take the next step and learn and go through some training and some resources or hire someone that's going to help me get better? I think it's an important question as business owners that we should ask ourselves all the time, but it also works great in our personal lives today is, were you brave today?
I love it. So amazing. Be brave, right? Or are you brave today? Or were you brave today? Even if you messed up yesterday, it's about today.
It's always a new day. As long as God lets you wake up, it's always a new day to try again.
Very, very good advice. Now, Stacey, as we close out today, a lot of our viewers and listeners want to learn more. They're going to want to know how personally to implement the advice that you've given us in our businesses. So how do we connect with you? How do we learn more? How do we work with you?
Yeah. So, the best place to find anything you want to know about your referrals journey is going to be the home base, which is my website, which is staceybrownrandall.com. And Stacey does have an E. So staceybrownrandall.com is the website. On that website, you're going to be hit with a lot of opportunities to learn different things. I always tell folks, if you're a reader, start with my book, Generating Business Referrals Without Asking. You can find it wherever books are sold. If you're a podcast listener, just listen to an episode on the podcast where the title catches your attention, right? And that's Roadmap to Grow Your Business. And then, of course, peruse the website. You're going to find downloads and freebies and quizzes that you can take to learn more about where you are and your ability to generate referrals without asking. We have a lot of content and resources on our website, but I think either just picking a random episode where the title strikes you on our podcast, or just getting the book, whether that's the ebook, the printed copy, or the audio version. I do read it myself. So I do go a little off script if you get the audio version. I try to be funny. I don't know if I am. Try to be a little funny. I try to be like Mike Michalowicz is when he reads all of his books. He goes off script and he's really funny. But you can get the book. And one of those will probably speak to you for you to understand, hey, is this something I want to learn more about? And then, of course, from there, we can take the next step together if you want to go deeper.
I love it. Definitely. And what I'm going to do for you guys too, is I'm going to put Stacey's contact information in the show notes of this episode. So if you guys are on Apple Podcasts, scroll down for the show notes, Spotify, it will be there. YouTube will have the links for there too. So definitely check that out so that you can reach Stacey, work with her. And Stacey, thank you so much for sharing so much wisdom with us. We've learned so much and, about being brave and really being selective about our networks and what we do with our networks.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Stacey.